Good day, everybody. My name is Chip Coldren, and I am the Managing Director for Justice Programs at the CNA Institute for Public Research. I'm also the Director of Technical Assistance for the Bureau of Justice Assistance Body-Worn Camera Technical Assistance Program. I'll be helping facilitate this webinar today. I'm going to ask Michael Rosa from BJA to just please start off with a few comments. You there, Michael?
I sure am. Thanks for having me. And thank you, everyone, for joining. It's great to see such a good crowd. We do have 103 applicants, or I should say awardees this year. So you're a big group, and we appreciate the attention to this webinar. It's one of the best ways we have to reach out to you. So we look forward to this and other forms of communications that we have. Chip has a good presentation set up for you. You're going to be hearing a lot about the program, the types of resources available to you. I'll talk a little bit about what programmatically you should expect from BJA, as well as James Dye going to step in and give you some information about the performance management team. So we're going to get started and get everybody out of here on time, but otherwise it's nice to have you, and we appreciate your attention.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So this is, as you can see, this is an introduction to the Technical Assistance Initiative for body-worn cameras, and I'd like to talk about our approach to technical assistance as well as the resources that are available to all of you. And just so you know, there's a partnership that's been developed around this technical assistance project. It's CNA, several of our colleagues from Arizona State University. You'll hear a little bit from Dr. Michael White today, who is the co-director of this technical assistance project and one of the contributors to the body-worn camera toolkit that I imagine some of you have seen. We also have Craig Uchida and Shelley Solomon from Justice and Security Strategies, who are also partners with us. So we all share the responsibility for delivering technical assistance and developing technical assistance resources. We've been doing this for just over a year now. And we're, as Michael said, we're very pleased to have everybody on the phone today. There's a lot of work to be done over this next year, and we're very happy to get started. Okay, Denise, the slides are not advancing for me. Wait a minute. There we go. Okay. So just a couple logistics that I need to go over. We do record these webinars for the benefit of those who cannot be on the phone. So please be mindful of that when you make some comments or contribute to the chat room. We will ask you to complete a webinar evaluation after this. I ask you please to pay attention to that. If there are questions that come up during the course of the presentation, please use the chat room capability and put your questions there. Somebody will be monitoring the chat room, and we'll find some time to go over any questions that come up in the chat room before the webinar is over. I would like to remind everybody that if you're not speaking, to please put your phones on mute. It's generally done with a #6 combination, key combination. That just keeps some of the background noise out of the way, and it's actually, background sounds pretty good right now, so I appreciate that. So as Michael said, we're going to go over the purpose and goals of the Technical Assistance Initiative, introduce you to our team members, talk about the technical assistance process and the range of resources that we have available to you, give you some information about some upcoming events. Then you're going to hear a little bit from the folks at BJA about their performance measurement tool, which is how they track progress in the sites with a number of different metrics. So that's what we have laid out for today. Mike, I'm going to turn this back over to you for a couple slides, please. Mike Rusa?
Yep, you got me. Okay, so the purposes of the TTA, Training and Technical Assistance, I'll keep it short. TTA is really to provide services to you and to help us guide to a successful implementation for you guys, as well as to collect what worked and what didn't work. We'd like to hear both. The purpose here is really to inform the nation, whether it's through the toolkit or through research or other components. We're here to promote your grantee success, but then we want to echo that success with agencies that may not have been awarded, may not even thought of needing funds, but want to use the toolkit or other resources to help out. So please keep an open dialogue when you work with subject matter experts, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But really, we want to know how it worked for you, why it worked, and what you think would be good for other agencies that are similar to you to go and implement these programs. We funded CNA. It was a competitive process and they did an excellent job preparing. And I recommend if you know of any of the agencies from the 73 from last year, and if you have someone that you can talk to them about the process and find yourself a peer. If you need a reference from your subject matter expert, that's fine too. But their job is to deliver fast response, and they are very good. And please take advantage of them. And even in areas, if it even smells like BWC, please ask the question. Don't just guess. This is very important work. We want to see the progress move. And again, in that sense of a community of practice, of working together, finding you a peer or some other expert that can answer the questions you have, or maybe even ask some questions that you haven't asked yet, and make sure that you're not going to run into a roadblock. I have seen agencies stop cold for things as simple as not approaching their prosecution early enough. Now, I know all of the agencies on the phone have a letter of support from their prosecutors that this project is happening, but just so you're aware, we reached at least 6 months into the program last year, and sure enough found out that even though they had the prosecutors were aware, they did not realize how complex the relationship actually was becoming. So again, use your TA, use the, listen to the expertise that you're going to be getting from this team. And then, as I said, we're going to move it forward into that side. I'm going to first introduce the staff. Again, my name is Michael Rose. I'm a senior policy advisor. I wrote the solicitation and reviewed and recommended all of your applications for award. So I have a good feel for where you're coming from. My recommendation actually went to Kristen Mahoney, who is my director, who is the policy director for BJA. She comes from law enforcement, technology, and administration, and she is very capable and supports this program. So if you have an opportunity, which you will hopefully at the national conference, make sure you say hi and talk to her about any particular areas you may have. Other team members I'd really like to call out, probably the king of the toolkit beyond Dr. White. You have Todd Maxwell, who works here at BJA. He's a subcontractor to Booz Allen Hamilton, does a fantastic job keeping your information and keeping others' information on that toolkit, as well as having pushed us to have so much multimedia resources. Jimmy Sai, who is the PMT, is going to talk a little bit later about the PMT. Again, it can seem complex, but it doesn't have to be. So that's going to be important for our work. Geraldo and Yolaine, also very important people. These are the ones that are actually going to be checking the boxes when you send information or send a request, maybe for a grant adjustment or a budget modification, or just want to ask a question about what do I do next in the grant world. Geraldo and Yolaine are absolutely fantastic. They've given us really strong, and they work for Stephen Fender, also a very strong programs person from BJA, so don't be afraid to ask the question. In this case, asking forgiveness is not better than seeking permission, because forgiveness can be just a straight out no, we will not refund or reimburse those funds. So do not assume and just start spending or do things that you are wondering if they're right in the grant. We do not mind answering questions. Please go to there. Now, I wanted to touch the programmatic information pretty quickly because I know we have a long webinar going, but there are some really important areas. One, most of you have your travel budgets. We're going to talk about the national and the regional conferences as well as other types of training. If you do not have travel budgeted, please reach out to your subject matter expert when we get there and make sure you start talking about how you can attend these conferences and how we can make these pieces happen. Otherwise, the quarterly reporting, Jimmy will talk about when we get down to the PMT, or the performance management reporting components. But really what I wanted to talk about was some of the special conditions and your purchasing practices. It's really important to, one, keep your grants people, of course, notified of what you're doing in your grant, but procurement is an incredibly sensitive area when it comes to using federal funds. There's always the general supplanting rules in those, and I won't get deep into that. Your grants people understand what the supplanting components are. But particularly in procurement, there are two special conditions that we worry about. One is that you're working on an approved budget. If you have received an approved budget, then you should be aware of what you're allowed to spend, what you're not allowed to spend. But really, most of our spending is hinged upon the second special condition, which is the policy special condition, which we'll get in depth in just a few minutes. But basically, you need to know that until your policy has been approved by BJA, I should say the policy development process, because we don't grade your policy on its own, it's more how you developed it. The majority of your funds are not available to spend, which means you should not encumber them until you've received that checkoff that, yes, it's okay to go out and do your procurement. If you have, you need to reach out to Geraldo or Elaine and start talking about how we can figure out what's allowed, what's not allowed, and go from there. This is particularly that area where forgiveness is not going to work. We are stuck by the language of the solicitation and the special conditions, and we'll have little help for you other than getting you through and figuring out other components that could work. So beyond the special conditions, I wanted to touch a bit more on this, which is the sole source justification. With 73, we saw of last year's awards, we saw a good number. I don't remember exactly how many, but a good number of sole source requests. Most were not allowed. We pushed back because there was not quite enough work having done on the agency side to actually justify the sole source. There are several vendors out there, and many are very aggressive and want you to submit something that they are providing. Please work with your procurement before you ask for a sole source justification. Don't just do it. If you are running a pilot, please be very careful in your pilot. Be systematic and actually bring your procurement people into your pilot so that you can document it, such as a market study or those areas to identify if a sole source was actually justified. I can talk later about sole source if there are questions, but in general, there are so many contracts available, so many other vehicles that you could use in a competitive process, which is what the federal guidelines require, except for the odd exception of the occasional sole source. So we'd really like you to go through the process of understanding what you needed in your body-worn camera system, putting that out there, identifying who meets that criteria to a competitive nature, and making your selection based on that process, and then getting into there. So again, if you have, when it comes down to those, ask questions early. Let us know that you're thinking that direction if you're going to go there, and we can help make sure you hit all the points that are necessary. Any kind of question you have around the special conditions or the programmatic nature of your grant, please contact your grants people as well as our grants people, again, Yolanda and Geraldo. Just ask the questions, again, around budget mods, modifications, or other expenses allowable, those kinds of things, and we'll be glad to help out on that area. Again, this is, for the large agencies, this is a 2-year grant. For the small agencies, this is a 1-year grant. And we have to figure and make sure everybody's aware of what the limitations mean when you're in that situation. Beyond that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chip to let you hear about how the TTA team can help you out, and then we'll hear from Jimmy on the PMT. All yours, Chip.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael. So just very briefly, there's a few names that you should know because you'll be in contact with them in some cases quite frequently, in some cases less frequently, throughout your award period. Denise Rodriguez is on the call today. She is our project manager. She'll be talking in a few minutes. There's a gentleman, Tom Woodmansee, who's a retired lieutenant from the Madison, Wisconsin Police Department, who's one of our subject matter expert coordinators. And Charles Stevenson is also retired military and formerly with the National Institute of Justice technical side of the shop. He's also a coordinator, so you may hear from them from time to time. And Dominique Burton, I believe, is on the call today as well. She's our outreach coordinator. If anything that happens regarding newsletters and podcasts that we do and webinars that we do, and we will from time to time ask some of you to participate in those to give us the benefit of your experience. Dominique is most likely the person that will contact you for that. From Arizona State University, as I mentioned, Dr. Michael White is on the call today. He'll be talking in a few minutes, and there's also a Professor Chuck Katz at Arizona State University who also worked with Mike White and Todd on the toolkit. I did mention Craig Uchida and Shelley Solomon from Justice and Security Strategy, so those are the primary team members from our side. I can tell you that from each of these organizations, there are many more people than the ones listed on this slide that are working on this project, and there's a lot of help and a lot of resources available to everybody, and I'll explain more about that in just a minute. So I think this is where I turn this over to Denise, but I want to just say one thing and then ask her to join in. We have we think a very good approach to how technical assistance works in projects like this, and what I like to stress is that all the people that you saw that are in this partnership and on that slide, we don't sit back and wait by our phones for the funded camera sites to call us, with questions or requests for technical assistance. We maintain a dialogue and a relationship with them throughout their projects, and we talk about how things are going on a periodic basis, and it's through those conversations and through that relationship that ideas will be generated for technical assistance. I would also say that you'll hear about a fair amount of resources that are available to you today, but if there's a resource that doesn't exist or some information that you need that we haven't discussed, please feel free to reach out and ask us or ask your assigned subject matter expert for that assistance, and we'll either find it or we'll develop it for you. We have a goal, and so far we have met it where we meet everybody's request. So with that, I'll turn it over to Denise for a couple minutes.
Thanks, Chip.
Yep.
So Denise Rodriguez, I'm the project manager on this project, as Chip mentioned. Wanted to quickly touch on the TTA teams and what that looks like on your end as a BWC PIP site. So we have established, I think it's about 8 or 9 different TTA teams, and we are grouping the sites based on size as well as agency type. And each group is assigned, as Chip mentioned, a subject matter expert as well as an operations analyst. And the subject matter expert, again, will be your primary point of contact as well as the analyst for any TTA requests. As you guys go through the policy review process, they will walk you through that process. You will be engaging with them on a monthly basis or more frequently as needed as well. We pulled in a number of subject matter experts to help with this new year and new set of sites. Folks like Charles Stevenson and Tom Woodmansee, who Chip already mentioned, Steve Brickman, who was the technical advisor for the 21st Century Task Force, Commander Clarence Trapp from Pittsburgh, and the Deputy District Attorney Damon Moser from San Diego. We've also pulled in recently retired Assistant Chief Orlando Cuevas from Camden County, Chief Scott Hogg from Idaho, and recently retired Chief Carl Medlock from Fayetteville, North Carolina. So we've got, in addition to those folks, as Chip mentioned, we do have a much larger network of subject matter experts. So if you guys are needing some assistance that's specific to technology, storage, communications, or community engagement, we've got folks as well that are ready to assist as needed. And then the next slide, TTA process. Again, you will, or you should expect to hear from your TTA subject matter expert sometime before the end of the month. We are currently reviewing all of the proposals, the program narratives that you submitted, and we are taking a look at that. That'll help us get a better idea as to who you are, and we, as well as the SMEs as well. So the SMEs will be reaching out to you before the end of the month. They will first assist you with policy development. As Mike Russo mentioned, that's an important piece to this process, and reviewing the policy with you as well and going through the scorecard. And then, as I mentioned again, the TTA team will be your primary point of contact for any TTA requests. Again, they can take any requests that you guys need, if you guys need, and Chip will provide a couple examples of what that TTA request will look like. But all of that will flow through your subject matter expert and your analyst. I think that's it. Back to you, Chip.
Very good. Thank you very much, Denise. So let's have Dr. Mike White introduce himself. I asked him to please talk about the policy review scorecard that we've developed that you will be involved with. You there, Mike?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
I can. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, great. I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about the policy review process and the scorecard that we've devised. The scorecard, and you can see the link on this slide. You can access it through the toolkit. The scorecard is designed based on the latest and greatest understanding of policy issues related to body-worn cameras. It was developed based on information from the toolkit, from the PIP COPS report. Anything that was out there that we thought was relevant, we took into consideration, and in fact, we just finished a review and revision of the scorecard after the first year of use. And the idea with the scorecard is that it rates the comprehensiveness of your administrative policy. We look at 11 different policy areas covering 41 specific policy issues. And essentially, as you can see from the slide, we rate your policy on whether those issues are addressed. There are 17 specific issues that are mandatory. Those are ones that are in red, and those are issues that BJA felt was so critical that they absolutely have to be covered. And the bottom line is that as we go through this scorecard with each site on their policy, you end up getting rated, and you have to get a 17 out of 17 on the mandatory issues, obviously, and you need to get a score of 80% or better overall to get that recommendation for approval. And as Mike said from BJA, you know, that's the decision then that releases the rest of your funds. And I want to make an important point here on the scorecard, because there are lots of different scorecards out there, and ours is very different. And ours is different because, as I said, we rate the comprehensiveness of your policy only. We're not prescriptive. Through our review, we're not telling you what your policy has to say on specific issues. We're simply looking to see if the issues are covered. So, for example, one of the more controversial issues is citizen notification. Should you tell citizens that they're being recorded? On our scorecard, the item is simply this: does the policy provide guidance on citizen notification of the body-worn camera? Does the policy provide guidance on citizen notification of the body-worn camera? Yes or no? If your policy provides guidance, you get a 1. So as you think about that, we're not telling you what your policy should say on that issue. All we're looking at is to see whether or not your policy provides guidance to your officers on that issue. And that's an important point because BJA and the TTA team, we think the issues related to directionality, what your policy should say on notification, things like that, that shouldn't be decided at the federal level. That's decided at the local level with your department, your officers, your internal, external stakeholders. And one other point about the scorecard, the process is an iterative process. It's a back and forth between your agency and members of our team, and that's fine if there's some back and forth, and that's the way it's designed to be. The last point I'll make is that obviously because of the way that we've designed this, we're allowing for and encouraging variation in what agencies say on specific issues like citizen notification. So one of the things that we've been doing at Arizona State is doing a policy analysis of agencies from the first year to see where agencies are coming down on specific issues. And we have a report that will be available relatively soon that looks at 5 what we call kind of hot button issues. Citizen notification is one of them. Activation, deactivation, officer authority to review, and supervisor authority to review. And what we've done is we've looked at what policies are saying from the agencies from year 1, and that report will be available relatively soon. So that's the policy review process and the scorecard, and I think I'll kick it back now to Chip and Denise.
Yep. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. So I'm going to go into a little review now of the types of technical assistance that are available, but I think I'll just stop here and see if anybody has any questions up to this point. Anything that needs clarification by the subject matter experts or the teams that we're assigning to you? Okay, so let's continue. Here you can see that there's quite a range of technical assistance resources that have been developed and that are available to you. We just talked about the policy review. We have a series of webinars and podcasts that we do, at least one a month. And if you go and visit the technical assistance website or the toolkit, you can see the podcasts and you can see the webinars that have been recorded. The podcasts have actually generated quite a bit of interest. They're very brief, 5 to 10 minute presentations from either subject matter experts or researchers or practitioners in the field that have addressed certain problems. There was one really interesting presentation from Montgomery County, Maryland, where they basically decided to assign 2 cameras per officer. And so we just asked them to come on and do a podcast and explain the reasoning behind that and what that did to their costs and how they managed all that. So, but the podcasts cover a range of issues from privacy concerns to storage options to working with prosecutors to community engagement around policy development. So please take advantage of those. We do have other resources that we can deliver to you. We can put you in touch if the subject matter expert and analyst assigned to you don't have the answers to the questions that you're looking for. We can find somebody else who does, and from time to time, we can send them to you if it's that important and if that's what seems to be necessary to move your project along. We also have the ability to fund a few peer-to-peer visits where maybe there's a department that you want to visit where there's something very special happening there. It's very similar to what you're doing in your department. It's possible to have those kinds of connections. We do have a speakers bureau. So if there's something happening in your locality or in your region, or if there's a statewide chiefs meeting where they're talking about body-worn cameras, if you request it, we can have somebody attend and make a presentation covering some of the stuff that we're covering on this webinar, but covering whatever topic you think is important for your people to hear about. We do have, in addition to the national meeting, we will offer several regional or topical workshops. We just did one a couple months ago in Charleston, South Carolina around prosecution issues, and it went very, very well. There's another coming up in January at Arizona State University. We'll focus on policy and policy development issues. So those are a resource for you. You do have the toolkit, and we have our technical assistance website where you'll find a number of resources as well. So I thought I'd just give a couple examples of technical assistance to kind of bring some of this to light. One of the more interesting things that we worked on the past year was a request from the prosecutor in Detroit for some help on collaborating with the Detroit Police Department. And I think there were several things going on there. One, the communication between the department and the prosecutor's office was not where they wanted it to be. And the prosecutor's office was not feeling very well prepared for what they thought was going to be coming down the pike to them in terms of evidence and video footage to deal with. So we found Damon Mosler in San Diego County, and we put him together with another one of our subject matter experts, and they made a trip to Detroit to meet with the Detroit Police Department and the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. And since that has happened, the collaboration has improved tremendously. So we did that. We had a request from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, to have somebody come and speak at a community forum about body-worn cameras and some of the issues that people are concerned about, the privacy issues. And fortunately, we have Commander Trapp from Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania who was available, so we sent him to speak in Carlisle. But we've handled well over 75 or 78 technical assistance requests during the first year, covering a broad range of issues. One of the things that we've done is we've started to develop some templates. So these are general guides or recommended courses of action for departments to take as they're building out their programs. One of the more important ones, we think, is a template for developing an RFP for working with vendors and making sure you have all the information in the RFP that you need and you cover all the bases. And that can extend into some technical assistance around how to run a pilot program and how to do the evaluation of the different vendors. We're developing a training template. So we're collecting training curricula for cameras from all across the country, and we will come out with a recommended course of action for training officers on body-worn cameras. And we will come up with a recommended course of action for soliciting community input in the policy development phase. So these are things that we have developed because of our relationship with the first 73 sites. And as I said earlier, as we engage with those sites and as we talk to them, these ideas bubble up in the conversation. These were not ideas that the folks at BJA said, okay, you need to do A, B, C, and D. All these ideas are generated from the field. So as I said before, if there are templates or resources or other types of assistance that you find that you need that we do not have available, please let us know, and we will do our darndest to make sure you get it. Okay, here's a little bit of information about upcoming events. We have some webinars scheduled coming up soon. There's one on how to deal with policy compliance, another one on collaborating with prosecutors, another one on getting officers interested in body-worn cameras, and finally, evaluation and performance measurements. These are not the only ones that we do, but these are the ones that we have scheduled. And again, if there's something you want covered in a webinar, just let us know. We are planning a rather substantial national meeting that will take place in the spring of 2017. The exact date and location is not known yet, but we'll know it soon by the end of the year or after the first of the year, and we'll let you know in plenty of time to make your plans. But this meeting is a great opportunity for all of you to meet each other and to interact with each other and start to do the peer-to-peer learning that we think is so very important in this program. And it's obviously an opportunity for the Bureau of Justice Assistance and CNA and our partners to deliver some advice and assistance that we have learned during the first year is very important to body-worn camera sites. So we look forward to seeing you there. I think it will be a very helpful event. As I said, we have a regional meeting planned for this January 11th and 12th around policy issues. Maybe Mike White wants to say a word or two about that, but there will be others scheduled in the upcoming months, and we'll get that schedule out to you. Mike, you want to say anything at all about this regional meeting in Phoenix?
Sure, Chip. We're planning the meeting. We have the dates set. And you can see the dates, January 11th and 12th. The focus of the meeting, it's a day and a half, so it'll be a full day on the 11th, half day on the 12th. The focus will be on some of the key policy issues, many of which I mentioned a few minutes ago that we've been looking at in the policy analysis. But also we want to talk about the cutting edge in terms of research. There are a lot of studies that are ongoing with regard to many of the important outcomes associated with body-worn cameras. ASU is involved in a lot of those studies. So we're going to have several panels that will be focused particularly on the research issues and what those research issues and findings mean for the agencies that are just getting started. So we'll have a strong presence from the year 2 and the year 1 sites from this region of the country, the Southwest. And then we'll also be bringing in several researchers from around the country to present. So we hope to see you there.
Good. Thank you very much, Mike. I've got one more slide to get through, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy from BJA to talk about the performance management tool. But this is just a reminder that there are a number of resources available to you. The toolkit is available. If you haven't looked at it, it's something that you absolutely must look at. I've now read about 15 or 20 of the program proposals that were sent into BJA, and hardly any of them mentioned the toolkit in their proposal. That doesn't mean that they didn't look at it, but I'm developing a bit of a concern that maybe people are not looking at this or looking at this as in depth as they should in getting ready to implement their programs. So please take advantage of that. There's our website, the CNA Technical Assistance website. There's an email that if you want to send us a question or a request, just send it to this email, BWC TTA @cna.org. And I can promise you that you'll get a response in a very short order. The podcast series is available on iTunes. There's a link there. And we have several social media sites on YouTube and Twitter. And there's also available to you a federal procurement guide that you should probably take a look at just to make sure that your procurement process is in good shape. So I'm just going to say a couple things as I close this out. These materials exist because we think that they're helpful to you, and we've learned over the past year that they've been helpful to other sites. We encourage you to make as much use of them as you possibly can. If you don't find something that you need, just ask us, and we'll find it for you. Please indulge your subject matter experts and analysts when they call you and try and set up that first phone call to introduce themselves and start the conversation around the policy review process. So let me stop here for a minute and see if anybody has a question at this point before I turn over to BJA. Okay. If you think of something, send it to us at that email address or send it to us through the chat facility, and we'll respond as quickly as we can. Now I think I'm turning it over to Jimmy Stayee from BJA for a discussion of the performance management tool. You there, Jimmy?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, good. Welcome.
Great, thank you. So my name is Jimmy Stayee. I'm a contractor for BJA. Currently the project manager for BJA's performance measurement efforts. And I also provide analytical support for the body-worn camera program. So today I'm going to talk to you briefly about why we place such an emphasis on performance measurement and what BJA does with that data. Second, I'm going to talk briefly to you about your reporting requirements and how to complete them. Then we will briefly discuss the narrative goals and objectives section of the PMT and how to write clear and concise goal statements. And then if I have time, I'll cover the body-worn camera tracks, which is a tool that is made available to grantees to use for data collection purposes. So why do we have performance measures? Performance measures help you to help you, help us to help you, and help us to provide analysis and information for transparency, including information to make decisions about the program internally and externally, and provide information and analysis to external stakeholders, such as Congress. And yes, it is required by law. This slide details BJA's performance management products. It represents both the present and the future, as some products are still in the planning stage while others are existing. The body-worn camera is just now in its second year, so we will be rolling out these products more regularly, likely starting with the grantee feedback report before the end of this year, based on FY16 activity. Here's a brief example of a grantee feedback report and what it will look like. However, this example is for the BCJI program. The body-worn camera grantee feedback report is in development. Like I mentioned, we hope to have it out by the end of this year. So what is the performance measurement tool? The tool, or the PMT, is how we get and collect data from you, the grantees. It is an online web-based system. BJA's intent is to use the BWC performance measures to understand trends and changes the grantees experience over time. With this practical understanding, BJA is better able to meet requests from Congress, Office of Justice Programs, the Department of Justice, and other stakeholders to offer insight into programmatic and policy considerations. The body-worn camera performance measures are reported in two formats: quantitative, numeric, and qualitative or narrative responses. Quantitative data are entered into the PMT by grantees every quarter, while narrative responses are provided every 6 months, in January and July, and also at the end of the grant award. Responses to final report questions are required only at the end of the grant award. And please note that grantees are given 30 days after the end of the reporting period to complete data entry. If you're working with a partner or a sub-awardee, please ensure that you're working closely with them to gather their data in time for timely data entry. This slide is a nice summary of the reporting schedule, and you might consider keeping this handy in case you need it for reference in the future. To partially complete your reporting requirements for the body-worn camera award, you must complete data entry in the PMT and upload the PMT GMS report to the grants management system every 6 months. The PMT GMS report is added as a separate attachment to GMS. After the GMS report is attached, you'll also have other reporting requirements, such as financial, that your program manager can talk to you about. But this will complete your reporting requirements for performance measures only. To generate the PMT GMS report as a PDF, you will complete the data entry, taking care to clear any system validation issues or data entry errors. After data entry is complete, you will select Export to PDF, where you will be able to save the document to your local computer. You will then need to upload this document to GMS. Now I want to turn attention to the narrative section of the performance measures. The narrative questions are goal-based, meaning you will be asked to identify and list the goals in which you hope to achieve with this grant. BJA then requests that you give 6-month status checks on each of these goals. In addition to the goal and status checks and objectives, BJA asks if you would like to request any technical assistance or showcase any innovative programs that's being funded with this award. That can all be done in the narrative section. When thinking about your goals, please remember that goals are SMART. SMART is they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Here are some examples. A bad goal that we've seen in past reports is simply to buy body-worn cameras. while it seems straightforward, something that might be a better stated goal is to improve officer interaction with the public by equipping all officers with body-worn cameras. Another bad example is to test body-worn camera effectiveness. You could restate that in a form of a better goal, to evaluate the effectiveness of body-worn cameras at decreasing complaints against officers. Another example, write new policies on body-worn cameras. A better goal would be produce 3 new policies governing the use, storage, and dissemination of body-worn cameras and recorded video. So please think about how you want to state your goal statements, and think about these examples. The performance measures can be categorized into 2 phases, planning stage and the implementation stage. The planning stage is really centered around the policy and procedure development, and aligns closely with the scorecard, which Mike talked to you about earlier. For category 1 through 3 grantees, you will be in the planning phase portion of the questionnaire until your policies are reviewed by BGA and the TTA provider, and you move on to the implementation phase. Please note that this is done through self-selection in the PMT questionnaire, so please be cognizant of your response in relation to where you are in your grant activities. For category 4 grantees, you should just respond to the planning phase questions once during that first reporting period, and then you would move on to the implementation phase. But this allows us, by doing it once during that first reporting period, allows us to get a baseline in regard to some of your policies and procedures. Here are some resources in case you have any questions or concerns about the performance measurement reporting. Please note that the extended version of the PMT training, recorded webinar-based version, is available in the PMT under the help link in the PMT. Or if you're unable to find it, please contact the PMT help desk at BJA PMT at CSR Incorporated. If you have any questions that I can answer, there's my email address, telephone number. You can also get in contact with Laura Wyckoff, who I report to here at BJA. Now I want to switch gears really quickly to point out that BJA has made available an Excel workbook, which we call the body-worn camera tracks, or the BWC tracks. The BWC tracks is a voluntary tracking tool and mechanism. It's an Excel-based version that can be used to assist with regular data collection for the quantitative performance measures in the PMT. The tool is flexible in that it can be used for either daily, weekly, or monthly data tracking. Use of this tool is strictly voluntary, but is made available as a resource to you to assist you with data collection. If you're interested in looking at this tool or downloading it for your use, it's available on the PMT. There's links there which are under the help page. I've also copied and pasted on this slide the direct links for the track workbook as well as the user guide that details the use of this tool. With that, I want to thank you all for your time in this webinar and for your public service. And please let me know or let us know if you have any questions. So I'll turn it back over to Chip.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Jim.
Oh.
I'm still here, Michael.
Good.
So last chance for any comments or questions from the 160 or so people that are on the line.
And again, you can use the chat feature to go directly to the host presenter to send a question, or contact through the TTA emails, and we'll be glad to post any questions we get along with the webinar. Denise, nothing in on questions?
Okay, so here's a couple good questions. One, just asked if we would make this presentation available to the participants. Yes, we will do that, and I'm sure it'll be posted up on the website as well. So yeah, we'll send that to you so you have all those links that are handy. And Mike, here's a good question. Someone's asking if they can lease the cameras instead of buying them.
Absolutely. It's a good question. We do not have a restriction on leasing or buying use of the funds. A lot of the services we see are no longer just straight equipment buys, particularly with body-worn cameras. You're seeing the storage, redaction, and other types of services going to the cloud and being services. So leasing the cameras makes as much sense. But be sure, obviously, to work with your procurement and make your selection still based on competitive components, unless you already have a contract, of course. But there is no issue with lease versus buy.
Good. Here's another question. Will the TTA contact us by email or telephone? Probably both. I think they start out with an introductory email to the point of contact that we have that was identified in the proposal that you submitted to BJA. And from that connection, we first establish and make sure that is absolutely the right person that our subject matter expert should be talking to. Then once they make contact through email, they'll request a date and time for a telephone conference call, so they can talk with you and probably with several members of your body-worn camera implementation team. Oh boy, there's a couple other questions.
I wanted to. Go ahead.
Here's a question. If we have existing body-worn cameras and are getting a grant for more, should we track the grant cameras activity separately for the grant purposes? Mike,
absolutely. So, yes, that's correct. Any funds expended, require the encumbrament and everything to happen within the grant period. If you're looking for reimbursement, obviously you're going to, which is how this grant works, it's a reimbursement grant. You're going to need to submit those cameras. So please do not submit an encumbrament to happen prior to the grant award. So don't mix them up. You do need to track them separately, as well as if you're doing hours for officer time and training or other types of requirements for match. Yes, you should track those independently as part of the grant management program. They might not be significant considering some of the grants being relatively small and just equipment, but for those with more complex budgets, the grants person and or your procurement people should be consulted. And feel free to ask questions. We are here to help if you have a question about it.
Good, thank you. Here's another question. How will we be kept up to date on training? So I think there are two things that happen. Number one, your assigned subject matter expert is one of your best contacts to have, and so they'll probably even have an early indication of when some of these regional workshops or training are coming up, but everything should be posted on the website as well. And so there's a calendar of events or a listing of events on the TTA website that you can refer to as well.
Right.
Denise, I don't know if you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, for performance measures, any trainings that are going to take place will be emailed out to whoever the point of contact is, or any other additional contacts that are listed in the PM team. So just check your emails for any of those.
And I'd like to add also, if you happen to have something nearby or some type of training that you've identified as important to your program that is body-worn camera driven and we didn't provide it to you, that's perfectly fine. If it's not in your budget but you'd like to have it in your budget, that's a grant adjustment notification. And I'd say if you can make the case, I don't see a problem with it, but I can't guarantee everything approved. But I would certainly ask that you let your subject matter expert know so that they can be aware of it, and we might go to get other agencies taking advantage of such types of resources as well.
Okay, here's a good question. What should we focus on in the interim period before the TTA contacts us? Policy-related, budget-related? I think, you know, the big thing that you will need to do, obviously, is to get that policy developed and approved so you can get the remainder of your money and, you know, buy whatever cameras and equipment that you need. So if you go to the body-worn camera toolkit, or if you reach out to any of us, we can give you examples of policies. You can find policies from jurisdictions of a similar size, you know, or maybe they're rural jurisdictions or suburban jurisdictions, but you'd be well advised to start looking at the policy review scorecard and the policy review elements and, you know, getting ready to develop that policy. That's important.
Also, Chip, definitely the community outreach part is one of the areas we've where we didn't see any community outreach. There was pretty strong pushback. So if you haven't done any, we recommend that you start the conversations with that. If you need some assistance, there are certainly examples we can provide. But I would also recommend getting the scorecard that is referenced in this link. So as soon as we send that, download that scorecard and look at the writing in it to see the points that we'll be asking to address, and feel free to do a self-examination on the scorecard development process. If there are areas where you feel like you might come up short, but then you either need to address it or identify why you came up short in that area. It might be that, you know, again, I don't want to say which way, but maybe it's not a policy that you see as applicable to your agency as such. So you just want to get those thoughts together and be prepared, because those are the questions the subject matter experts are going to ask.
Right. And if I could add really quickly, if you have not already reviewed the performance measurement questionnaire, the PDF version that's made available, that's in the solicitation, please review that and review it with an eye toward planning your data collection. If there's any things that you might be concerned about collecting or how you're going to collect that data, make plans around that. That way you can be ready to respond to all questions during that first reporting period, and have that source documentation and that source data available to whoever is going to be doing the data entry for you guys.
And one last piece is, from your perspective, you should be aware of, in your agency, who has relationships with body-worn camera vendors. If you're an existing agency, please just be cognizant that we have had agencies, large agencies even, that have had to redo the procurement because they did not realize there was a fiduciary relationship to a body-worn camera vendor while they were doing their procurement. This could be that the officer is just doing pro bono training for the agency, or it could just be direct. They're being compensated for training other agencies on cameras, things of that sort, or some type of expectation of services. So we do ask you to be careful. It's an incredibly aggressive market right now, and the vendors or the service providers are trying very hard to get your contract. So we just ask that you approach that very carefully and be aware within your agency who's on your project identification or your product identification team, and just make sure they have a clean bill of health there.
Very good suggestions. I would also add that even if you have a letter of cooperation or a memorandum of understanding with your prosecutor, you'd be well advised to start talking with your prosecutor early on and get them prepared for what's coming down the pike. I think almost across the board, we have seen with the first batch of agencies that hardly any of the prosecutors were prepared for what was going to happen to them once these cameras came online. So that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, we have great TA resources for prosecutors, as was mentioned earlier. So please take advantage of those, or ask your prosecutor to take advantage of those. It's not just you that can use the TA resources. It's any of the criminal justice agencies you're associated to.
Yep. Mike, here's a question maybe for you. Is it appropriate to charge annual maintenance, storage, et cetera, toward the grant if we have recently purchased the needed body-worn cameras?
So this is a tough one, because I hate saying no. Of course, you can charge storage or other pieces to the grant. Storage directly, if you remember in the solicitation, there's actually a prohibition against federal funds being used just for storage. But not many systems have just storage as a line item. They're usually some kind of embedded contract where you don't actually have a separate dollar for storage. It's really the services that come all together because they're all wrapped very tightly. So that's the first thing you got to make sure is that it's appropriate for your federal reimbursement. For match, of course, storage can be used. If you recently, let's say you recently got the award, and at the same time, because it was late in the day, you've already purchased all the cameras you need. Assuming they're already delivered and the encumberment's done, you basically have just worked yourself out of a grant because there is the requirement to purchase the cameras. The $1,500 metric still applies unless you were going to go about buying another batch of cameras. So there is still that $1,500 requirement for cameras purchased inside of the program, and the program doesn't technically start until the award and the special conditions are released. So if you have that problem, please reach out directly to your grants program person or myself, and that'll be in that email that I sent out or through your grants person, and it'll be either Otto, Elaine, or myself that you should contact and have a discussion about what you've actually purchased and what are some methods we can use to help you out.
Very good. Another very pragmatic question. How long does a TTA review take? That kind of varies. I don't know, Denise or Mike, maybe you want to handle that. Could take a week or more.
Sure.
Some have been pretty extended with a lot of back and forth, but it can be done, within a couple of weeks when things go well.
Right. Yeah, I would agree that the lion's share of the time is in the relationship between the subject matter expert and the agency, getting to where it's clear. This is why this homework up front really would pay off. Actually writing down your response in paragraph form to each of the 41 areas, which sounds like a long piece of homework, but it'll save you time and understanding when it comes to the subject matter expert's review of your policy. If that part gets knocked out, the actual work, we'd say it's about a week before we receive it once the subject matter expert's done with it, and then we take about a week to actually release it from the special conditions. So really the processing time, I'd say, is about 2 weeks. Your work, we've seen anywhere from a month to 6 months in some agencies because state laws have changed and other issues where they've changed their policies are still not done yet, but that's really based on their need, not ours. So it's, again, get this work done early, identify the information in the scorecard as it relates to your development process and go from there.
Another question, perhaps for you, Michael, is do you all give out any recommendations for body-worn cameras?
Yes, we give out lots of recommendations, but not specific to any vendor. We are glad to put you with peers. We are glad to tell you the types of technology and the impacts of those types of technologies on different agencies, such as do you want to go with standard def or high def? Should you implement infrared type components? Should you do enhanced audio? Should you work with cloud or not cloud? Should you, those kinds of questions we can certainly give you recommendations on. But we do not have a recommendation. We obviously have to be agnostic to the commercial market. But what I can say is DHS has done a nice job, and actually NIJ is working on some as well of research. If you go to the toolkit and look those things up, you'll find it. DHS has done a nice job of comparing apples to apples when it comes to different body-worn camera vendors to help make your selection more appetizing to you. And a lot of this is so based on different state laws and local needs that any one recommendation from us would be wrong for 80% of the country.
Good. Thank you. I think, no, here we go. Is the Phoenix regional meeting mandatory, or can you attend another conference if not Phoenix? Yeah, it's not mandatory. It's available to you, and there will be other regional meetings available to you later on in the year.
Right, so the national conference is the only mandatory. The regionals, we hope you'll attend at least one. We'd love to see a variety of people, not just the chief, not just the project manager. It wouldn't hurt to have a procurement person or a grants person or maybe somebody from the prosecution or the defense. And I'm not asking everybody to bring all those people, but again, if you have a strong advocate in any one area, that's great. We're not saying it just has to be any one type of person coming. You should identify the needs of your agency, where you think you might need some assistance, or where whoever might gather the best information to bring back and send those people.
Good. Here's a good question. Where or to whom do we need to send our policies to be approved, and how do we know that our policy has not been approved? Almost all of that communication will take place between you and your subject matter expert. From time to time, one of us might get involved, myself, or Mike Rosa, or Mike White, or Craig Uchida, or Shelley from JSS. But largely, the process goes through the subject matter expert up to CNA and then up to BJA for final review.
Right. And when BJA releases a special condition, we send notice that the special condition has been satisfied. So it really goes to your grant person, but we try to inform the subject matter expert as well, and we'll even try harder this year to make sure, but pretty much you should be aware from your grants side, looking to them for when the release has been available.
Here's another one, Michael. If an awarded agency wishes to withdraw their award, how do we move forward?
Contact either Elaine or Geraldo. We can certainly discuss if there are issues or something that went there. We'd, of course, like to talk you into staying because these funds do not necessarily come back to BWC. If there are things that are just beyond your control or you're just not prepared to do it, this has happened in a couple cases from last year's. It can be done. There are considerations for match and other types of areas. In general, withdrawing from the funds, you'll just pretty much email you, Elaine, Geraldo, or myself, and we'll get you started in that process and have the discussion that's necessary and identify what types. Usually it's a letter from the approving authority that asks for the grant in the first place. So it's usually either a city manager or someone of that sort, just to make sure that we're not canceling a grant that was, was not at the top level.
Okay. Here's a good question, Mike. We are a sheriff's office already using body-worn cameras on patrol. If we are implementing a jail body-worn camera project as part of this grant, do we still need to go out for bid, or can we use the current body-worn camera system we already have invested in?
Great question. Again, any competitive contract is all right. So as long as you went through a competitive process, that's no problem at all. If you had done a sole source before, we'd have to know about the sole source and approve that as a procurement method. But in general, most agencies that we've seen in this situation have a contract that is available to them. That is no problem. Basically, if your city, county, locality / state have approved your procurement method, most likely we will approve your procurement method. There are not a lot of overhead with the federal guidelines on that. There are some. I won't say everything's perfect, but in essence, yes, any competitive contract, whether it's previously bid, as long as it's active, you're not opening a dead contract to make this work. It wouldn't be allowed, but as long as it's an active contract, it can be used. You can actually purchase off other agencies' contracts as well. We had Chicago purchase off of a New Jersey contract that was available. And there are lots of community contracts, if you want to call it that, or regional contracts like WISCA or others that have certain body-worn camera vendors on them. So again, I recommend before you ever approach a sole source, to look at your contract availability. If you have a contract, amen, let's get moving and get you some cameras. So in that case,
Mike, I can just follow up on that. The Center from BJA.
Oh, good. As it relates to procurement, so thanks for the conversation on procurement so far. It's definitely been an area of we've tried to provide assistance that grantees historically have trouble with. The question is using federal funds and working with local funds. As it relates to using other agencies' open procurement, that is an allowable way for procurements to be used using federal funds. The most important thing is that it meets the requirements that for your jurisdiction. So all the same elements apply. You would need to have to understand, review, and maintain the documentation of the procurement, rather, what they sent out, what you got back, and how they made their decision. Now, if that meets your requirements, you can use an open procurement, but it's still going to have all the same requirements. Rather, if it's written too narrow, you'd be responsible for the funds that were expended using an overly narrow procurement. So it's something it's definitely something that's allowable, but you want to review those closely, just like you would your own procurement. And I'm certainly glad to take questions on all the procurement questions. I know we spent a lot of time on it. The reason is because that's probably one of our biggest challenges so far this year. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Here's another question. Does the expense related to attending the mandatory national meeting come from the grant or our own training budgets?
So you'd have.
Go ahead, Mike.
So basically, you need to look back at the budget that you submitted in your solicitation. There was a requirement for travel, and there are two ways we could look at it. Most agencies did actually put travel funds into their either federal funds or into their reimbursable funds, as in their match funds, I should say, where the agency was covering it, but they were going to count that as match. If they're in the travel budget, as part of federal reimbursement, you would travel and seek reimbursement, and of course you'd have to stay within the federal guidelines on travel for per diem and all the other rules that apply. But if you did not have travel inside of your budget, then your agency has pretty much two choices. The assumption on our side was that you are going to handle the travel on your own because it is a grant requirement and you weren't counting it as match or federal reimbursement. We still awarded even if you didn't have the travel in there. If there are hardships or troubles getting those funds, particularly in the small agency environment, rather than not attend or returning your grant funds, I'd request that you reach out to me and let me know that you're having these difficulties. In general, I would recommend, if you don't have either, that you identify the funds internally and use them as part of your match component. But how you do it is actually up to you. And again, the one mandatory training is really the national conference. If you needed to bow out of a regional, we could understand based on budgets in other areas. Though again, we'd like to see you there and maybe even send you there. So it's a talking progress. But let me know how that goes from there.
Thank you. I think there's one last question, and then since we've gone over our time, we're going to have to probably shut this down. But let me just, as we go into this last question, thank everybody, Mike White, Mike Rosa, Denise, Jimmy, for your assistance in facilitating this webinar. I appreciate very much everybody spending the time to sit and listen and hear us go through these issues, and I certainly appreciate the questions that have come up. Very interesting, and I'm sure it's very helpful for others to hear what the responses are. So here's the last question. Actually, there's two, but one is easy. Will you review and approve an RFP before it is released by the county procurement department? Mike? No,
we will not. Procurement is on you. If you would like input, we could give input, though actually in the RFP, basically we could possibly run it through a process of saying, hey, these functional requirements may be missing, or this is a good one, and we should recommend it to our template. But we are not required to see your procurement, though your procurement may be subject to audit during a desk audit, and certain types of documents, not necessarily the entire procurement, might be part of on the road when it comes to evaluation of your procurement method. So be careful, do it right, follow the guidelines. If you have questions, ask, keep good documentation, but otherwise it's in your hands and your procurement officer's hands.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Finally, when and where is the national conference? We do not have a location and a date finalized for that. I'm sure many of you know that there's now a very elaborate process that we need to go through to get a conference like this approved by the Justice Department before we can announce and recruit participation. So we're going through that process right now. We think we'll be able to let you know soon, but we just don't have that available at this point in time.
So we're currently targeting what time frame?
April. Mid to late April.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
That's about the most we can give you. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Mike, thank you very much. And all the participants and presenters, I thank you as well. I'll turn it over to you for maybe a last comment, Mike.
Well, again, thank you for attending. It's great to have so many on the line and good questions. I really appreciate it. Don't hesitate to pick up the phone. My cell phone was in the email that I sent out to the grants people. If you're looking for me, again, Michael Rosa, R-O-O-S-A. If you Google me, you will find me with body-worn cameras. My cell phone is on my LinkedIn account and as well as others that you can get to. Don't hesitate to call or email me at the Department of Justice. We are here to learn from you. That's really what it's about. Your process is crucial to us moving forward, to the nation moving forward with a new technology like this. We're trying to prevent repeating the mistakes of LPRs and other types of systems that have languished in so many ways because there was not sufficient upfront policy development. So thank you for taking the time, the grant, and being willing to work with us through this process and help us learn. Thank CNA for doing a great job of providing TA, and the rest of the BJA partners on the line as well. This has been a good project, and we're looking forward to keeping it moving. So don't hesitate to call and ask questions or email and ask questions, and we'll get you through the policy process as quickly as we can. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.